Good morning, councillors, staff, and visiting guests. I'd like to open the meeting and please stand for the acknowledgement. Almighty God, direct the needs of those who are called to serve in this council, that they may have regard to the welfare of the people. Amen. I'd like to pay my respects and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting, and pay my respects to elders both past, present, and future. As the second, go to apologies and applications for attendance by Leo Dishwater and also Leo absence.
I'll send later in the day.
Councillor McKenna has requested that he attend the meeting by audio-visual link. So I was expecting to be part of today, which I cannot see him there, but we just have a further in a second that he's requested that for the remainder of the term that he have that liberty of attending the meeting by audio-visual link.
Thank you. Councillor Newman, Councillor Wheeldon, those in favour? It's carried. Thank you. We'll have the disclosures of interest.
I might have one in the confidential section of the whole.
Councillor Haywood's declaring one.
Yeah, I've got one in 9.10, 12.2 and 12.3.
Councillor Haywood.
I'm taking 12 points.
Okay, well, if you think you had one, we'll make that.
Madam Mayor, I'll declare a significant pecuniary interest in item number 9.7.
9.7. Are there any others? Move for the second for those, please. Councillor Callister, Councillor Evans, those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Confirmation of the minutes of the previous meetings. Please, seconder. Thank you, Councillor Noonan. Seconder. Councillor Evans, those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Then we'll go to the close the meeting. We have a presentation by Mr. James Goldsworthy.
I'll move the standing order to be suspended to allow the presentation of James Goldsworthy.
Thank you, Councillor Newman. Councillor Wheeldon.
Let it run down there.
9.7, if Mr. Goldsworthy can forward, please.
Yes.
Thank you, James. Hope to see you there.
Good morning, James.
Well, we can
James, you need to.
wait for a second. Dion James.
We'll get that.
He's right, he's unmuted. Can you hear us, James? We can't hear you. No, he's got himself unmuted. I don't know.
It's unsatisfactory, Madam Mayor.
Understand that, Councillor Wheeldon.
Are you able to log out and try and log back in again, James, and just see what happens?
Patience in changing times, Madam
Yes.
It comes through.
No, it comes through that, yeah.
for your benefit, Mr. General Manager, the diary for today's meeting does say midday. Look for a diary. Yes. Also for the readers.
Very much.
No. Do you want to try? Do you want to try ringing in? There should be a phone number on the link there that you can ring into. That might work. Yeah, no. Cool. James, it looks like you're still muted though as well with your microphone. Just want to try that. Nah. He can hear us, but we can't hear him. Or do we want to get him to call your mobile and put it near the microphone? He might be able to hear. Might be ready. Or against close to this anyway.
James, can you phone my mobile? We'll try and put you on speakerphone.
No, we don't have this week.
Once you get done, we're running a bit. Right.
Got a mute. Mute all.
Sorry about this, mate. We'll try and put you on.
That mute all down here.
No, that's just. Let's see, he's actually down as being unmuted.
Yeah, that's
It said
right.
he's in because he can hear us.
All right, James, give it your best shot. We're going to put you. Where's that going to?
See how we go.
Try that, James. Yeah, I did that, I thought.
No, that's fine.
Did I just hang up on you, James? Why can't I just get that on speakerphone?
Yeah.
Or I'll just put it on there.
That's fine. Go back into there. You should be recording back there. So go back to recent calls. And try to speak.
I'm calling you.
We're in a vortex.
I can.
All right, James, we'll try it now, mate.
Okay, right. I can hear you. Are you able to hear me?
Yep.
Yes, please, thank you.
Okay, thanks. I might just start. I'm not sure that I'm picking up a lot of volume at your end.
I think he's struggling to hear what we're saying. That's all. I might have to relay the
It's
question.
all over to you, James. We won't say anything until further notice.
Okay. I'm sorry for putting you all through this. I just had a bit of a tight schedule this morning, so thanks for accommodating me. So we've been engaged by the owners of Calpos Basin to progress this planning proposal, and as you're aware, or some of the councillors may be aware, that the planning proposal really dates back to the 23rd of June 2005. That was when the owners of the land put forward a planning proposal to council for the rezoning for rural residential purposes. So that planning proposal, I suppose, continued through. There was made in 2007, and then further work done by both council and the landowner, and time when a gateway determination was determined in 2015, and a further subsequent gateway determination issued in 2018, which was extended. A further gateway determination issued here, which was really a bit of a procedural thing, I suppose, and the Department of Planning gave council and the landowner quite clear direction that what work needed to be done, what was outstanding, and what consultation needed to be undertaken in order for, I suppose, council to complete its assessment of the proposal and for the planning proposal to be for the Parliamentary Council for final authorisation. So basically, that process has now been completed. Gateway determination sort of ceases on the 4th of May of this year. So I suppose important for the owners of the land and the clouds, and it's been, important, I suppose, to get all of this work done. Council have been very supportive of, and for it to get to council today for a final determination and forwarding to the department. So where we are at in terms of the planning proposal being finalised is that all issues have been resolved, all information has been provided, and all agencies are satisfied, with the exception of agriculture, and they have objected to the planning proposal on this occasion. There has not been any objection raised by the department point through the process at any other time, given its long history. So it was very surprising, almost gobsmacked, I suppose, when we heard and was really the fact that there's loss of agricultural land and no clear strategy relation of council in relation to the rezoning of the land. And both council and ourselves have had some consultation with the department. I suppose with the intent of really trying to resolve outstanding issue. And one was that the department were prepared to receive a letter from council to say that there'd be no more planning proposals put forward for the rezoning of agricultural land up until there's an adopted strategy. We know that council are undertaking a strategy in relation to the rezoning of such land, and they've adopted their LSTPS. This land is located outside of the boundary. So I suppose we see it as a bit of an opportunity for the department to place a little bit of pressure on council and in a subsequent manner a lot of pressure upon ourselves and the McLeods being the owners of the land to really force the matter. And council have decided not to provide such a letter to the department, and so I suppose the objection remains to be outstanding. So I suppose where we're at is that we have the recommendation from officers today for council to forward the planning proposal to the department, and ultimately the ball will be in the department's court in terms of finalising the matter and putting forward a recommendation to Parliamentary Council for the matter to be finalised. We understand that the department is supportive of the proposal. that end, we would commend the officer's recommendation for analysing the matter and forwarding it to the department. And I'm happy to answer any questions which councillors may have.
I have one, if I may, Madam Mayor.
Councillor McAllister?
James, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Councillor McAllister, I'm just interested in the floodplain issue that was kind of raised. What's your response to how that's all been signed off, and what are the risks that council has been briefly briefed on, as I note in the papers here?
Yes, so there was, there has been flood studies done of the land, which has been, we engaged the same consultant who council have been using for the Shire-wide flood study, and I suppose that it was beneficial in that the work didn't have to be redone, but more importantly, there was consistency with the work that council had done. As a result of the fine-tuning of the work through the flood study for the land, there had been, like, to the extent of the land, and that had been previously reported to council, and council had adopted that tweak, which really those, I call them sort of the westernmost lots, deepened them in terms of increasing their distance from the river. And that was a clear recommendation from the flood consultant, and as a result of consultation undertaken with the Department of Planning. So basically we have a portion of those parcels of land that will be able to be developed for residential purpose, and in particular dwelling, that are outside of those higher risk flood areas.
And just on that, if I may, Madam Mayor, it's a related point. Would there be a caveat on those properties in relation to that? Is that a requirement? I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the legal formalities.
Yes, so it's my understanding that there's nothing within the planning proposal at the moment that would sort of the title. However, there would be consent required from council in order to put any buildings onto the land, and in particular in relation to a dwelling, it would be a requirement or a condition of the consent from council that would basically enable the dwelling to be located in that low risk area. And so, because council have been provided with a copy of the flood study, and the area is subject to flooding, so it would be a condition. And from the Clouds' point of view, I suppose they would be making prospective purchasers are aware of that fact.
So when you use the word condition, if I may, Madam Mayor, just to clarify the point, do you mean a condition of sale? So that would be, it would be publicised as such. It feels a little bit like there's a bit of a murky area in terms of people are being sold a property. There needs to be obviously full disclosure, and then at some stage later when development occurs, council needs to step in with all of those flood planning risks. So I'm just wanting to check, I guess, that there would be that full disclosure, and that it would be a condition of sale that the developer is aware of.
Yeah, certainly within the contract of sale, there would be information in regards to the fact that the land is subject to flooding. So there would be that information provided to any purchaser when signing a contract. And also, when I mentioned the condition is really I suppose when an application is lodged, if the dwelling was in the high risk area, I would have thought that council would be requesting further information and amendments. So the dwelling in the low risk area. So I suppose it's probably at the bare minimum a double prong approach. partly by council and partly through the sort of the sales process and contractual process in terms of executing that contract.
Thank you, and obviously, Madam Mayor, the point is moot because we're not likely to get much more water coming down that river. So thank you, James.
Does anybody else have any questions, Mr. Goldsworthy? Councillor
Yes, James, I noticed in the rest of New South Wales, the criteria is the land wouldn't be flooded more than once every 20 years. I mean, 20 years in New South Wales seems to be the standard. In Wentworth, we've gone for 1 in 100 years in an inundation of water. Why would we be worried about this land as a subdivision?
I'm not 100% sure of the question, but I think it was around about the 1 in 100 year flood extent on the land and why we would be concerned about that 100 year flood event rather than a 1 in 20.
Yeah, that's correct.
So I suppose that's really just the agency requirements and something that's built within the LEP in terms of considerations, and then within the statewide flood manual requires consideration of the 1 in 100 year flood and really just, like I said before, limiting development within those high risk zones. So within the flood study, the zones are identified, and that was the reason for the low risk zones to be identified as being appropriate for a dwelling, and the extension of the area of land to be rezoned. So hopefully I've answered that question.
Your attendance, and I apologise for the delay by the electronic media. So thank you, James.
Okay, thank you.
Can you return to the room?
I'll do the standing order to be reinstated. Or that,
Because the thing is, it's still,
Yes.
$250 above the 1% flood for the base of the house.
Yeah, so
That's 1%, sorry, 5%. AEP, I think 1% that.
what will come out is my understanding is there'll be an amendment to the LEP which will state that the floor level of any dwelling on those blocks will be at a certain AHD level, which will be equating to at 750 mil above 950
The 1%.
Thank you. I don't think I've done it yet. I'd ask the general manager go through the requirements, additional link on the area of the taking requirements.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This meeting's being live streamed and all recorded for on-demand viewing via council website and in-person image or may be broadcast. Attendance at the meeting is to be taken as consent by person to their image and or voice being webcast. All persons or speakers should refrain from making inflammatory comments or release personal information about another individual without their consent. Council accepts no liability for any damage that may result from the defamatory comments made by persons attending meetings. All liability will rest with the individual who made the comments. Meeting must not be recorded by others without prior consent of the council in accordance with the council's code of meetings practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. We'll go to item 6, outstanding matters from previous meetings. There's a recommendation there on this. Does anybody have any questions or any of those items?
I'll have to go up to 10.4, but I'll worry in phone here. I've noticed there has been a slight.
Point of order, Madam Mayor, I'll move the recommendation.
On my policy,
Sorry.
I'll second it.
Speak to it, please. Sorry.
Right, I'm trying to attend to whilst there appears to be a couple of dogs being rounded up, there's 2 or 3 have taken their place. Just come off the interchange bench. There's 2 black dogs in particular, a dog and bitch running around. He appears to have cuts of in pup. So I think they're roaming around, they come up and down around Liverpool Street Lane. They're roaming along the sort of roaming in small. So thank you for that.
Does anybody else have any questions? Councillor Hazelwood? Sorry, okay, Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, on 10.6, the cool backpackers, says here in the thing that the buildings are not being used. They have not stopped being used since we agreed to them with their farm stay. Last night, 4 a.m, the backpackers were outside of the ratepayer's house making phone calls. They must have an area that their phones work and they're ringing back overseas. So this person that's running this farm stay is not sticking to any of the rules. The accommodation has been used right from the word go. It's never been stopped and it's still being used. And it states here that there's no building is not in use, attending certification. So what are we doing as a shire, as a council, that we put these laws down and nobody's carrying them out?
One of the officers like to answer.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Hayward. The response to that is there's a couple of points there I'd like to raise. The first one being that, as we know, the backpackers there has the DA Land Use Commission to run as a farm stay accommodation type establishment. The actual buildings that are there are not being used. I've since been in contact with the owner of the property just last week, and we've been out a few times to talk about extra shedding for the farm operations and whatever else. So while the backpackers may be on the site, they do have permission for them to be on the site, but they're not allowed to be in the accommodation building because they're not certified yet. The DA conditions have actually granted the owner of the land approximately 5 years to commence the works, which he has done. So he's actually engaged a certifier from outside the region, and they are going through that process to get the work certified for habitability, fire safety, access, egress, all those types of things. So there's two things here. They're not allowed to use the buildings for accommodation that are there until they're certified, but they are allowed backpackers on the land because the DA, as previously issued, allows them to do so.
Well, to me, is that they'd have to be in some accommodation there, wherever it may be. I just feel that when we agreed to all this conditions, and also the owner agreed to the people staying there to keep them in line with keeping him away from other ratepayers in the area, which he's not complying with.
Yeah, so in that regard, Councillor Hayward, unfortunately, we cannot control the movement of people. That is a police matter. So if they are out early hours of the morning talking on phone calls and creating noise and maybe potentially road safety issues for the darkness of the night and vehicles coming and going, that is a matter for police. We can't enforce when people leave properties or what their movements are like, unfortunately.
I thought he now, when we approved this, that he agreed to do that side of things and keep it. Now, the police have been there on certain occasions and they say it's not up to them, it's a public thoroughfare. So we're in a situation where who controls this? The owner agreed to control his guest, but hasn't done so. So I feel that's part of his application. He's not fulfilling.
Well, can you just clarify that they can't use the buildings? There's no worries about camping shed.
So I'm given to understand, and the indications have been from the owner of the site, that they are accommodating them within the dwelling existing on the site. His dwelling is the owner's dwelling. So they're actually technically not in breach of the DA conditions from that regard. So because they do allow the farm stay accommodation use of land for that regard. So if he wants to house people in his house for that purpose, then that's up to him.
second, Councillor Toast.
Yeah, the other 10.4, which is at the top of the page, looks promising. Has anyone had a look recently? There's flats in there.
Yep, I have Councillor Elson on the flats in there. I've actually been out there, not last week, the week before, and I was there, and I have spoken with the owner of the units over the phone, and I saw him there on a number of occasions over the Easter weekend doing the jobs there that he actually promised he was going to do. Those jobs he promised to do was to renovate 2 of the units, which he is nearing completion on, and he's going to be coming back, he said, by the end of this month, beginning of next, to commence work on another 2 units and finish off the clean-up work. He has indicated that it's something that's going to take him a bit of time because it's going to cost him a bit of money to do, and he's just asking for a bit of leniency in that regard while he does actively take on that job.
I did a witness at the beginning of the council, and also almost fell over. Shock. Along my fence, so I my property wanted to know actually cleaning it up. Well, I'm not released yet, but it's a little bit of work done. This is a vast improvement of what it was. Vast improvement.
Councillor Toast.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Page 2 of 3, the bottom point there regarding investigating polling venue costing for Queen Carey. I would consider that it would be a massive impost to our ratepayers in that region if they had to travel 130 kilometres just in order to vote on one specific day. And I note there that there will be an update, hopefully.
Still waiting on the Electoral Commission to get back to us. They haven't. We've let them know that we want to have a polling booth in Pooncarie, and we just asked them for what the additional cost of that will be. They're still working through that, and that's as of probably just before Easter. I haven't. Yeah.
Any further? Councillor Haywood.
Yeah, 10.1, there's some California punch word out at the Oval at George Gordon Oval. It's anything happened there?
Yeah, I believe the parks guys had completed some work, particularly around the netball court prior to the weekend's game. Haven't had a chance to follow up with those guys yet, but I did see them on site undertaking that work around that particular area. Yeah.
Okay. Any further? Be moved and seconded. Those in favour? That's carried. 7.1 is my report. It is Friday, the 2nd of April, attended the launch of the new Federal Gun Club. It was very, very happy to see that one of our former young Australians of the year is still shooting as well as she's always shot, 150 out of 150 in the double barrel. So, a lot of the meetings here are to do with water and health. So I'll lose someone who.
I'll move it.
Councillor Lewin, second please. Councillor Redstone.
With the meeting on the March, the Federal Minister for Regional Health, Mark Corbin, and the Rural Health Commissioner, Professor Bruce Good. Anything good come out of that, Nicholas? Any hope, any glimmer of light?
It was well attended, and I think the professor certainly came across very, very well, and I think it's just one of those things that we're always hopeful.
Yeah.
If you think of anything else,
Did they say a lot of promise nothing? They said a lot of promise nothing.
yes. Yes.
Yeah, further to that, I was at that meeting, and it brought together a lot of groups of people that hadn't been in the same room together, which I thought was a great thing. The Broken Hill chats and all those other people there. So hopefully that it was well required.
May I just offer also, Madam Mayor, at the last WSIGWE meeting, the Wentworth Child Agency Group meeting, there was some really good feedback as a result of that meeting. The fact that collaborative care looks like, rather than being a cookie cutter approach that doesn't always fit for us, the ability for the grassroots to inform what's required, and the agencies that deal with healthcare in the region being involved. And as Councillor Hayward mentioned, that the unity that was shown by all of the different agencies being in the same room, I think was a very positive thing for the Minister to see.
I agree with you, Councillor McCullers. It was well attended. As I said, I was particularly impressed with Professor Bruce here. I thought she's a lady that's got her head on the right way and going in the right direction. So we can both hope that I think by having all those groups together, you get a more collaborative view. Now, let's go to the second. Those in favour? 8.1 of Ben Serves Scientific Report. Moving to second, please. Councillor Cullister, second. Councillor Rothschild.
Just briefly, Madam Mayor, this refers to 3 environmental waterings that took place after the great crime that was the acid sulphate soils turning the place orange and creating all sorts of concerns. Since then, obviously, last year there was one further environmental watering that everybody who knows anything about the previous waterings would say the place has never looked better. So there's just some really good information in there about the natural floodplain and how it responds to environmental watering.
Comments or questions? They've got a comment to do. They move second. Those in favour? 8.2, the Caramar Drive Sporting Complex User Group. Any comment or question here? No. Second, those in favour, the recommendation, that's carried. 8.3, the George Gordon Sporting Complex User Group meeting.
Move that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Noonan, second please. Councillor Sewell.
I wanted to say the new fence looks fantastic. The place was left for the pitch Saturday evening. Huge crowd out there. There's a comment, we got a sprinkles people making very favourable comments at the whole setup. So thanks to John for taking such a big deal.
I was very impressed with this group insofar as the amount of work that they're prepared to put into was amazing. It's what they're going to put into the playground and soft field and so on and so forth. So well done. And I think it's like our grounds, we need to use them, all of them, as often as many groups we possibly get in. So we move to sectors.
Can I ask a question, Madam Mayor? I see the plans for the renovations of the kitchen are being completed. And we've got,
Grants.
on the job. Yeah, sorry. On the job, seeing what they can do here. I think that we've probably got a fairly strong argument in the fact that the community did so much to get that second oval there without stable or federal support, basically. But, it should be a good avenue of appeal that we can see they can get some help for that kitchen development.
We're exploring more opportunities to fund. Many very perfect.
And the fact of the football club getting those 2 Adco huts that are on the new oval is going to be a great, there's been containers there for the kids to change, and that's going to be a great effort, and commend them on their going ahead.
Good right price too.
Yeah.
Very cheap.
Right.
Daily basis.
All right. Any further comments? No. Move to second, those in favour? Thank you, it's carried. 9.1, the General Manager's Report. Councillor second please, Councillor Evans. Any comment or question on the General Manager? None, those in favour? That's carried. 9.2, move to second please, request on then the date of the June ordinary council meeting. Wilson, Councillor McAllister. Any questions? No questions? Those in favour of the recommendation? That's carried. 9.3, 2021 Floodplain Management Australian National Conference on page 67. There's a recommendation there.
I'll move the recommendation for discussion.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
I'll second.
Councillor Bernard. Discussion, those
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
This is the only one of those ones where they flog you $70 and an online thing like the flagship breaking in the council legends 150 for free. To be online. Bloody. Well, we need to stop usually Councillor Wheeler and that things, those things, so he was I'll nominate him to be the online floodplain management person.
Council, it's probably something that we could pay for one person and have numerous councillors who are interested in attending that thing, because I'd like to see Councillor Wilson participate in all the matters, but it's up to the.
Well, I'll remove my motion that any councillors who wish to participate, you pay one fee and do a couple of us while you're all there.
Somebody.
Only one participant, I mean.
One at a time, just not to be now, this council sitting around.
I would actually like to see perhaps planning and engineering involved in some form too, because a lot of it's all about the floodplain management and, development, all that sort of, also perhaps the argument, Councillor McAllister and Hayward, everyone's been in for a long time over floodplain harvesting. It's a different. It's more about growth and development around towns than the argument, irrigation and that type of thing.
Yeah, my question was just going to be, Madam Mayor, whether there was a discount for just attending particular sessions, or whether there was a way of providing for that, because there's a lot of information here, a lot of presentations that probably aren't relevant to us, and yet there are some excellent presentations from DPI, who is one of those agencies that we have long been in the on the map with, I suppose. But talking about issues that could potentially have an impact for us, and a couple of them I've kind of highlighted as potentially interesting, but a lot of the rest of it probably not so much.
Based on the last one that I sent to the general managers on to auto dispensation, I didn't want to listen to two sessions of it. The auto dispensation, just logging onto that session, you're looking at the whole thing, and in my office environment, it was sitting on this, doing this, segment, such and such comes up, I participated, sort of thing. So I see this as a similar.
Madam Mayor, I've attended a lot of these conferences, and one-on-one and meeting the people that make the decisions, state and federal, is well worthwhile, but I really think this has gone the wrong way. I mean, yeah, you can press buttons and watch TV, but the value to me and what I thought the value to the council was to meet these people that make the decision, give the grants for flood studies, give the grants for flood mitigation. This way of having a conference to me doesn't give a lot of value to the Wentworth Shire, and maybe that's me. I mean, yes, they're out of the 20, 40 presentations, there'll be a couple that are quite interesting, but the value to me, and I think the council, was that one-on-one meeting the people that dish out the money, to making sure we're up there wanting money.
Perhaps we need to adjust the recommendation to the purpose. Council want to
Councillor Stone's.
Group was in place and voted.
So that perhaps the council can apply for one or secure attendance, and interested councillors can attend whichever session interests them.
We'll register for one online, 3-day online conference attendance, and whoever wants to participate will make.
That's exactly what I said, Madam.
Yeah, second for that. Is there any further discussion? Okay, been moved and seconded, those in favour? Thank you, it's carried. 9.4, on page 74, monthly finance report, recommendation there, move to second, please. Councillor Evans, Councillor Haywood, second that.
Yeah.
Any discussion or questions on the financial report, please? Councillor Haywood.
Just, our overtime seems to be getting away from us again, and extras 36,500 for the month. I know there the roads council are 183 hours outside of normal hours, actually more, nearly 200 hours with the council's roads. Really saw that happen.
We'll have to take that on notice, councillor, but I can't provide you with the individual specifics of what makes up that 183, but I'm happy to go back and provide information and provide that.
Thank you, Councillor Dawson.
Page 76, Madam Mayor, under the rates, water write-offs and adjustments, the final amount there, $1,000 reduction in water usage charges due to water leak. Is that the one that council had approved earlier? Do we know off the top of our heads?
No, this is one that Ken's.
That was a separate write-off of the ratepayer over Goldwell Creek coming to an end. In this case of, yeah, so yeah, a bill of about 3,000, I'll be right off the 1,000.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Discussion? Moved and seconded, those in favour? Carried. 9.5, the monthly investment report. There's a recommendation there.
With the recommendation, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Callister, seconded please. Councillor Haywood, there's any comment or questions?
Grants with you, Madam Mayor. It's very sad when you look at the
Unfortunately, it was something you could see coming, wasn't it? No further questions or comments? With the recommendation, those in favour? 9.6, health release renewal. Tower Kerry, and it's on page 84. To the second,
I'll move
please.
the recommendation.
Councillor Stone, Councillor Callister. Comments or questions?
Can I just clarify, please, if I may? Sorry, did you? No? I just wanted to clarify, it looks very much as though there's a massive increase on the annual rent. Am I reading that correctly?
That's correct.
Do we have any idea why that is? Have we been not charging them?
No, it's a 20-year lease, so I'm not sure how the previous lease was. It was before my time, so I'm not sure how that was constructed or how it was agreed to and how that rate was agreed to.
There must have been no, just a fixed 20 years.
I did increase by a certain amount every 5 years. So when they did their next 5-year option, it increased, but it started at a very low base.
I did have a supplementary question over there, if I may.
Sorry, Councillor McAllister. Yeah, it did start from a very, very low base from 20 years ago. And since then, IPART have done a lot of work in providing councils with guidance as to appropriate fees for telecommunications towers. So hence one of the reasons why there's a large increase between what they're now proposing to be charged against what they were originally charged when the lease started 20 years ago.
Madam Mayor, the thing is, the having Telstra Tower there is so important to the community that I'm not crazy about increasing it at all, because I mean it's something that if that goes or they find it too expensive, they'll close it.
No, they did. Their initial offer was $1 a year when they first approached us about 3 months ago. So I started at a figure slightly higher than what you see here at the moment, and we've come to at this stage a fairly mutual agreement that they're happy with at the moment.
So your recommendations, if we agree to a new lease in principle subject to the following report to council.
Yeah. I suppose the purpose of this report was to say, do you see any value in offering Telstra a new 20-year lease? If that's the case, well, then we go through the process of negotiating the finer details. Oh, absolutely, it's a crucial, yeah.
Councillor, I suppose the one thing is we did previously talk about discounts, and I noticed that this is a 50% discount on the 2021 restructure. So the deal to me looks reasonably well, and my thoughts on this spoke on this yesterday was that in 20 years is that figure going to look the same as 340,000 stars.
Just get my supplementary question here. So, just further to the question you've answered part one of it, which is how that figure came to be.
Yep.
The second part of it is looking at a further 3 by 5 year lease. Will there be a provision in there to increase the amount over time in line with CPI or other?
Well, at this stage, my plan was to actually have the fee increase in line with whatever the increase that IPART approve each year. So at the moment, it's a 50% discount on what IPART are proposing for next year. Every 3 years they do a review every 3 years and then set fees for the next 3 years. So what I was proposing is that whatever the fee that IPART set, say for 22-23, if that goes from say $8,000 to $9,000, for example, then the fee would be 50% of that, which would be $4,500. So you'd have a $400 increase to their charge in that next 12-month period.
Or alternatively, the discounted amount can decrease from 50 down to.
Well, that's another option. I haven't explored that option. That's the conversations that I've been having with Telstra at this stage. I'm open to have further discussions with them based on feedback from council. So.
Can you tie the CPI annually?
You can. They suggested tying it to CPI. From what I've seen and what IPART do, most of the stuff that they do tends to sort of go close to CPI anyway. So I just think the guide that IPART does is there's no argument around that, because then you start having arguments about which CPI figure do you use, etc., whereas IPART are already doing all of that work when they make their determination for that particular financial year.
Yes, I suppose the new lease in principle subject to the final report, so I think we've probably discussed all the options. So those in favour of the recommendation? Those against? Councillor Will, do you want your vote recorded?
No, I don't. I just think it's so good that they've got that out there that we shouldn't be slugging.
So now,
Well,
if we can get on there, then it's okay.
My experience is they're paying a lot more in closer in town for these sites.
Oh,
There you go, councillor Looners, I'm following the footsteps.
Don't trip over this, councillor Rosedale. Oh, yes, so now I have replaced it, it's been crap. Wow. I've been careful not to trip. Careful.
that happened to me.
Cheers, mate.
We'll go to page 86, 9.7.
Right, what results do you-
Environmental plan.
Sorry, what results do you guys have?
Oh, the result itself is, proposed we went to, with the recommendation that we'll have a report that factors.
Sorry, councillor Hayden.
Yes, I have it.
I'll move 9.7, recommendation,
Yes, Alice is seconded.
and to go to B, option B.
Option B.
And maybe 88.
Any wishing to speak to the? Nobody wishing to speak?
I'm happy to just address, the reason for the questioning, obviously, there was an objection from DPI Ag about, western land of, what's it called, grazing, reserve, stock reserve. My brain's not working. Something about, smelly beasts being not far away, and also limiting the amount of land that we might have for agricultural production, which to me showed that nobody from DPI Ag has actually been out here and had a look at the area, or indeed has noticed the proximity. I think it was 4 kilometres from Wentworth Township. The second, the point that I was just clarifying with James Goldsworthy being that, it has been noted that there is part of this development is on land that's been identified as being floodplain, and the provisions around how that's to be addressed, not only in terms of full disclosure for potential buyers, but also the risk that council must absorb at the time of approving DA. So with all of that in place, my concern is that it's taken since 2005, the better part of 16 years, to get yet another development through, that it's a particularly time-sensitive thing that needs to be done as soon as possible, and yet we're still under the shadow of this 2011 LEP that hasn't been approved, that seems to be holding things up as well. So while the government with one hand would like to tell us what we should be doing, with the other hand, they're not really helping us progress. And my final point, if I may, is that final point is gone. No, gone. Sorry, just like that.
Councillor Bill.
I'd like to support option B and make sure that the Department of Planning is informed that there is no way it is prime agricultural land. It is pretty ordinary sort of land, and for grazing it'll be about 1 sheep to 20, and it's pathetic that we've got to go through this circus.
Do you have any further comments? No. There's been a recommendation, being moved and seconded, those in favour? That's carried.
Need a division on that one.
And division. Those in favour of division? That's carried. Point eight, on page 129, delegated authority approval for the March 2021. Recommendation there.
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Councillor McAllister, Councillor Haywood. Any questions? Councillor? The only question I would have, and I had, was, I'm in there for on page 130, DA 2020-172, what sort of a carport was built for $1,000?
I think that on notice, Madam Mayor, and come back to you if that's all right.
Thank you.
I suggest that it's a budget one.
It could be, yeah, I'll take that notice and back to you, Madam Mayor.
Page 131, Madam Mayor, I'm just interested in WSC trustee. There's two there, one's a carport, one's a shade sale structure. What are we the trustee for? Is this Crown Land or what's?
Yes, so if I may, Madam Mayor, so the one on the Rumpo Road would be, is the landfill, and the other one underneath it at 64A Beverly in the report is a shade seal structure, I believe, for the childcare facility. It's there, I think, I have to double check that.
Golf club was there on it, but
Oh, the golf club, I believe. There you go.
2021, 25, 99 days to approve the alterations to the civic building. I mean, we've been to run an event, quite a circus.
Any further comments? No. I'll put the vote on those in favour of the recommendation. It's carried. Thank you. Division. Those in favour of the division. It's carried. Thank you. 9.9 on page 133, which really develops the Metro City Centre project updates and very applicants. Evans on that this time. See, why we can do it. So it's a lot of looking separate areas. Councillor Elster. Okay. Councillor so there is a recommendation there, quite a detailed report, and we'll take the work to receive very detailed. Anybody with any questions? Councillor McAllister first.
We'll be enthusiastic. I want to jump the gun. Once again, Madam Mayor, I'm noticing the intention to build a riverboat inside a building that's going to be sitting right next to a river that will have a riverboat in it. And this compulsion to fill up the space with stuff, lots of interactive noise that instantly activates as you walk past. I know there may be some sensitive people in the world that perhaps don't appreciate such incursions on one's solitude. And I did raise a point at a previous meeting that I would hope that the Wentworth makers and other interested creatives in the region might have an opportunity to inform what could potentially become this town's and indeed the Shire's shining gem in terms of display, gallery, artistic endeavour. For example, I've worked in hotels in other places where there's an atrium and things can be hung from places and things can be moved around, and there's also the facility to move everything out so that you can accommodate a great number of people. And I would consider that building structures within a place just to take up the space might actually not be a really terribly good idea.
It's talked about the rate pay, so rate pay should be better than that. That's what it's easy to know. I have a question. There's three things here about grants that have been applied for, and probably 2.1 million. What happens if we don't get them?
obviously the long-term financial plan says that this council's got a commitment to borrow $4 million and not quite to reduce based on some preliminary costings, grant money to support the future outcomes of the building.
And how much is the very interesting
The document,
how much is that particular
$10,000 for that document.
Any further questions? Councillor Brown?
Recommendation. We've owned this building for over 5 years. I mean, really, the general manager in this project, I'd like to see that he can do it. I mean, it just seems like nothing's happening, and we get consultants reports. Surely you've got up to this time we can get something done. We can use the bloody building.
Councillor Wilson, I think we've gone beyond what's necessary to be said. We have a new general manager who is working to the capacity that he needs to work to, and I think we are moving forward. Any further?
Thank you for your comments, Madam Mayor. The reality is we've got a project, we've got some risks to mitigate, we've got some things that happen in a timely fashion from here on in. The delivery of this report is to have that discussion point, have that consultation. We are or aren't moving ahead in the right direction. A lot of work happens behind the scenes to get these documentations out of this discussion point alone. We've got sentiments of just getting a build, we've got sentiments about are we going down the right approach or whatever else. I'd suggest out of this now we need to do a level of community consultation and get to see where are we at. I mean, Councillor McCallum's point of view with the makers and what else they'll play a role, my understanding, in the MDA conference and that space and bits and pieces. So we're taking on board those comments, but the reality is a report like this triggers some concerns, some questions, whatever else. But now to got to identify through community consultation when you are going to do this, you are going to do it like this, and the design is right, engagement's right. Behind the scenes, I've got all these compliance matters in terms of fire services and other bits and pieces. So I think out the back end of this, while it's a pretty simple recommendation, I would also suggest that we have a walkthrough, we have an engagement, we have a strategy that sort of says to the community, this is where we're at, we're going to move forward with the engagement of the council.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment on this Splendid project and all this project of where we're going. I reckon it's fantastic that somebody's had some vision here. It will make us the state of the art, just going on this vision. And about the paddle boat in the building, we're not always guaranteed that there's going to be a paddle boat outside the building. And I think we have to have the history of the port of Wentworth really based inside that building too. But yeah, it's an overall project and in this Randy projects, it's just fantastic.
If I can, on page 134, just the point for the manager, non-compliance issue.
We really are down to dual power supplies to supply pressurised water for the hydrants and hose reels and the dam system between the two buildings. So we've engaged with a specialist just to do that for us. So I can't think we've got paths of travel, we've got entry, egress. So I think we are down to that fire suppression mechanism.
What we have to remember, councils, is that the building is state of the art when it was built. However, it's now a building that doesn't comply with quite a few of the things we need to try and do. So, and there are things now that we have to do.
Well, I think we should visit our foundations if you could know that can be answer. If they didn't have an engineering report, they're doing a report. I still can't get this for a report that report. The foundation is a long ground, sitting on a clay pan, leading to the river. Because that's still in. But no one ever gives me the answer, ever. I'm in 85, but I'm not the same thing. So through
through this design phase, you'll see that there's numerous engineers, consultants and other bits and pieces out of that. BRT consulting, it's all of that. You know, one of the questions asked the specialists, we've done all our due diligence around that, so now we are down to the final structural detail. It's pretty cool.
Just on page 135, the fixtures list for consideration. That's not in the quantities of motor estimates, that's on supplementary.
What document? I'm sorry, councillors.
1, 2, 3 now here on page 134.
The quantity surveyors have got that taken care of. It's now down to us to sort of say, well, no, that's not an issue.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Sorry, just supporting Councillor Hayward and comments there. I think the work that's being done is probably is difficult, very complex work, and it's a structure that we can't just walk into with a carpet square from Bunnings and reset it up. That would be nice, but it's not going to happen like that. We know that there's going to be a lot of work in this, and the most important thing I see is an opportunity. We don't take this opportunity and make sacrifices now. We're going to be in the future. Sacrifice for some of us will be the time taken to do it. It can be frustrating, but we need to keep our eyes on the ball.
One last point for me, out of this, I see this is the open opportunity to engage with the community, so we'll do some kind of engagement through the MDA conference. I or the mayor or someone will talk about this project and talk about how it's progressed and opportunities to have the tourism and promotion for Wentworth Township, the Port of Wentworth theory. So it's really bringing it to your attention now. We'll give you the heads up that we're just about to ramp into some engagement and consultation.
We're expecting the right people to be at the conference, and if they see a building that's not complete, that they can see the ability of the building to supply our needs into the future, we have a better chance of perhaps gaining some. Well, they move, recommendation, move and second, those in favour, that's carried. Thank you. Item 10, page 160, projects and work streets all updated. There's a recommendation there, councillor. Move it, please. Councillor Vernon, the seconder. I'm looking at it. It's sitting next to you. Councillor Alfaro. Thank you. Yes, the others in the back of the room.
I'm actually over the moon to see that the Deakin Town Creek corridor is going to be completed by June the 30th. Is that written in stone? I'm thinking hung out the drive this is so bloody done.
You know, we're pretty sure the project team, through Jim Snow, the team leader, Parks and Government, side on
a tree that won't have been
one thing, the upward and downward growth.
We don't want to set an energy coming in at their homegrown school of tree pruning.
I think we've come up with a 3 metre.
Oh, thank you.
Pushing something.
We'll wait in the pipeline. No, we'll go for that.
Any further questions? Listen, they move to second, those in favour of the recommendation. Carried, thank you. Yes,
I'll just probably also thank the Director of Roads and Engineering for putting dates attached to the photos.
I'd like to thank those in the gallery for their attendance, those for the viewing also, and I'll put all the last notes for most of before we get rid of the pictures in the gallery. So, yeah.
So we have council.
I'll move the
I'll move
later agenda item. Let one, one bit of discussion.
Would you like to talk to it?
Oh, look, we've had a lengthy discussion.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, point of order, the item's been included, now it just needs to be
Oh,
moved.
those in favour?
Sorry.
It's twice, isn't it?
That's it, mate.
Isn't it? Yeah, look, we spoke earlier about this. My concern is the fact that we're giving away, it's close to $900,000.
Sorry, point of order, Madam Mayor, did you get a second?
I'll second that. Yes, ma'am. All right, can I start now?
Sorry.
I'll put this notice of motion first because I was concerned about multinational companies getting discounts in our business. When our locals don't, that's a part of the mix that notice first. When I saw the report here that we've given close to $900,000 in discounts to a couple of multinational companies in the last 2 years and 8 months, in February this year, I was appalled. So I just asked that we cease discounting.
There's comments, please. For or against?
Against doing anything at this point of time. I see no harm in discussion with those contractors or even maybe some negotiation and reduction, but I think we should go flat back and I think it would be not a good move given what's ahead of us and given that come September there could be, I don't know, completely different people sitting here that their hands full.
Yeah, I'm saying with Mr. Councillor. But, yeah, same thing, in favour of maybe talking to them, but definitely not flat out, cancelling what we have now.
My point was just going to be that, you know, there is a risk here. We run the risk of losing what we have built in one fell swoop. If negotiations could be handled sensitively, just by way of, I guess, you know, advising that council is in a worse off position financially, as most businesses probably are, and yet the waste business continues and is an essential service. That you know, perhaps they could consider whether the discounts that apply at the moment can be altered in our favour. You know, I would certainly be happy for those discussions to be had, but I would consider the risk of losing all business too great to immediately cease discounting.
Madam Mayor, I won't support the motion. I don't think the council should be asleep at the wheel, and we should make sure that this increase in the tonnage for the thing be followed up at every opportunity.
Support concerns from the council. We support that.
We moved and seconded. Those in favour of the motion? Those against? Thank you, it's been lost. So.
Substantially.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah. I think the sentiment's been taken on board, and I'm sure we'll go first now to on page 168, item 10, notices of motion and questions with notice, and I'll go around.
Oh, gosh.
Quick on the clock, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
I have one.
All right, I'll come this way. I'll start with Councillor Elton.
I'll just have a couple. Can we at some stage get an update on what you think is going to happen to the pet lakes proposal out there at Belmont? And to Director of Engineering, are we getting any closer to the Public Works on the scope of works around the infrastructure around Brooklyn, Belmont, and Belmont Water? It was Public Works. Public Works is all over it.
Integrated water cycle. Integrated water cycle management. Yeah, that's the currently underway, but it would still be on the completion for that. That plan would be the better part of still six months away by the time that's completed, I would imagine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, thank you. My question is around the signage, the Coates hire signs at the bridges advising people that Victoria has restrictions. There's no other information than that. I would hate to consider that we're contributing to scaring people off moving across the bridge. But my question directly is, who's paying for those signs to be put there? Is that a council cost? Are they required, and can we remove them?
If I may, Madam Mayor, there are still limited restrictions going across the bridge at this point in time. Victoria still does have a traffic light system, even though it's not regulated or controlled by a checkpoint. I only know this because I had recent visitors from out of state visiting me in my residence in Cabarita, and they had to go through a permit system to get entry to the state of Victoria. So those signs are valid. I don't know who's paying for them or at what cost, but that system is still in place. Those signs are probably still warranted.
I would take some of the people to visit some of those houses with people almost rear-ending them because they want to.
My issue, I guess, Madam Mayor, is that there's no contact information on them. So if it just says restrictions, it's a fear sign, and it doesn't provide information. And I suppose that's my issue. I would consider that if there was a contact number or something, perhaps we can find out who has it.
Victorian government.
It should be, absolutely, but it should be easy enough to.
Well, we'll get the programs and finding some information, probably only a phone call or two. We should be able to find out.
Does the Director of Finance and Policy know whether we're paying for those?
We're not paying for those signs.
Thank you. No, that's all I had.
Yes, thank you.
No, right, thank you.
Yes, Drew.
Yeah, I've got these. First, the tree fallen down at the Pavona boat ramp. I would like to know who the council employee was and who the Maritime Services people are that are not going to let us do it. Get rid of that tree because the locals have said it's a danger, and the first person that gets, if there's a fatality, I want to know and be able to tell them who is responsible or irresponsible for not having that tree moved. It's in the water. It's dangerous. The locals have said it's dangerous. That's good enough for me. The next one is the next one is the clerk of courts. We've had the services removed from Wentworth. There are a lot of disadvantaged people that are not getting looked after now. They're told .com.au and all this crap. They're not getting help. They need help because they can't do it, this computer stuff. And if we don't complain and make our feelings known to the department and the minister and our local member, nothing's going to happen because they'll say, oh, it's been going on for 3 months and there's been no comment. I think it's important that we comment again, saying, the things that we had provided, the state provided, and now are not provided. I think it's incredibly important that we follow it up. We might win, but at least we seem to have a go at the people that can't. The Aboriginals, the pensioners that aren't computer literate are just denied all virtual access to the Department of Attorney General because of this mad rush to be computerised. And the last one is the progress that we are not making on getting the Wentworth Caravan Park up to scratch. We missed Easter. We've got very good operators there, but they've got nothing to promote because we've been dragging the chain on the approvals and getting the contracts that need to be done, we are going to lose that couple. And it'll be a tragedy for the town that we lose them because we have not done what we said we'd do, although we're told would happen. And I think someone needs to be given a little hurry up. See, that's mild enough for you, isn't it?
Yes, that's mild.
And those three are the things that I wanted to raise.
We'll just take on board the caravan park. There's going to be a caravan park committee to further the design acceptance on
27th.
27th of this month. So the designs basically completed with options in relation to retaining walls and other circumstances that we haven't linking things.
The way we're going, Madam Mayor, it won't be right for Christmas. Not the country music, not the show. It's just too slow. We've got to bloody move a bit.
Councillor Newton.
I'm right, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Yes, a couple of things. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just brought to the attention this morning, General Manager, the bins, the skip bins in the town. I know I brought this subject up before. There's been a chatter over Facebook the last probably couple of weeks. There's been some pretty sad sights around town with skip bins piled over and furniture scuffed around and all manner of rubbish around those locations. It seems to be an ongoing problem in a town like ours, which is kept so generally so beautiful. We have these monstrous piles of rubbish, and in fact I talked to someone at Gold a couple of days ago and they said, yeah, they refer to the skip bin as the Gold tip. So I think, it's a subject that, and I spoke to a couple of people yesterday about this, it's a subject we don't often sit down and talk about. There has to be a solution. It's probably not an easy one. I was even told that people should look after their own rubbish. Or manage their own waste. That's not easy when you arrive on a boating network or you arrive in a motor home, you've been on the road for several months or years, in fact, some people, and you need to be able to accommodate those people in the town. Otherwise, they'll go on to some other place that does accommodate. And houseboats are a good example. You come in, and I'm hoping that with the restructure of the riverfront, it'll make that situation easier. But my recommendation a long time ago was we look at bins with the wheelie bin tops, which are locked down, and you can only put a certain amount of rubbish through that wheelie bin top. It doesn't allow for open bins and piled up on top. And then we have to then enforce the regulations that anything outside that bin becomes illegal dumping. And that's over, I'm sure Madam Mayor would confer with that because of the bin over at the bowling club, which is an absolute disgrace. And it happens anywhere we have a skip bin. So it's a difficult one to face, difficult one to talk about, but I've been having some good conversations with locals about it. That we have to find a better way. If it's one step is getting a bin that restricts the amount that can be put in or the size of the waste, that would be great.
I have to agree with you, the bulk size bins, perhaps an alternative might be to that is that during times of peak use, we put another bin there. Because that by now then you'd have two bins, but they wouldn't be overflowing and going all over the place.
What happens, we did that down, I know that happened down in an extra bin, went down to the riverfront there, both bins were piled up, both had motor car tyres in them, both had mattresses, they were just loaded with rubbish. So I think we have to start somewhere and to restrict what can be put in them, I think is an excellent thing. The homework I did suggested that the bins are more expensive with the wheelie bin tops. So you've only got an area you can put a small amount of rubbish in, but they certainly look better. I've seen them in other council areas and they work very well.
Yeah, and sorry, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think just to clarify on what Councillor Evans is saying, experience across the board seems to say that most of the issues are caused by locals. the actual visitors to the town, the users of the houseboats, they actually, which is what the bins are for, they actually do the right thing. It's the locals who don't want to take it to the tip and get charged to go to the tip are the ones that just go and dump it by. And we're not the only ones who have the issue. There's councils all over the place who have the same issue of how public bins are used by local residents to avoid having to go to the tip.
I think that's very true, and it is, I can say, because I've seen it happen. The locals are the biggest offenders, and perhaps that's not fair in some circumstances to say that, but because it's very costly to go to the landfill now or to the transfer station. But we have to try and restrict the size of cardboard boxes and furniture that can fit into a bin. And it's worth a conversation. I think having a conversation.
I totally agree with what you say. Perhaps the hard waste proposal that just like happening in June may alleviate some of those things, because we know tyres are expensive items to take to a waste area, and we may get rid of the books.
And they won't fit inside of the bin.
No, they won't.
Yeah, but when you go to get new set of tyres on your car, $6 to get rid of your old tyre. It's very little cost at the time to leave it at the service station. People load them up in their boots to take them home because they got 4 tyres. They've saved $24, but it's costing the council.
Just a couple more points if I can just roll on a bit with the discussions there for the bins. The fire on Junction Island was a nasty thing to happen, and very sad. Hopefully we'll find a reason for that, but perhaps another conversation we can have is about how that rolled out. I saw a situation where the fireys had to carry on stretchers for people, pumps across to, the only way they could get across was with handheld stretchers with pumps on them and hoses to get across to the fire. I know Parks Victoria came to be fireboat eventually, but whether that's something we need to plan for in the future or not, I don't know, but certainly it will regenerate, and perhaps that same situation could occur again. So it's worth having a conversation about in terms of how we deal with the future development of that area, how we can have something there that can get across and maintain that island without a walk-only area, unless you've got a boat that's going to be on hand to get in there quick. That's something just to think about. I think we've touched on my third point and final point is consultation on projects. I think I'm copying so much at the moment about the EDS and Baronga. It's just probably just backing up what Councillor Wheeler made comments on. We must be careful in the future not to go down this track. I think it's been very difficult for us as councillors to find the right place in this in our position as councillors, because we need to see that projects are carried out in a fashion, particularly in the consultation process, and the Civic Centre will be the pinnacle of that. I think that we need to get the community on board. We make mistakes in that area. It reflects directly on councillors, and it's tough. I'm getting so many calls. What the hell's going on with the EDS and Baronga? Well, that's a fact, and we have to deal with that now. We know it's ongoing, but 16 or 18 months to build a major project like that, just unacceptable. So we need to make sure we don't go down that track too much in the future, as we have a lot of projects out there.
May I respond to just one of Councillor Evans' points, the one about the bins? I know Madam Mayor has put forward, and I think it was accepted, a motion for hard waste removal. I'd suggest that become an annual thing, but also I have mentioned in the past when we've discussed the issue of hard waste that at another place in another state that I was living in, the ratepayers would receive a free tip token for 2 of them, I think they got at the time. So the owner of the building could have one, the ratepayer, the tenant could have one, and then that affords ratepayers at least one free hit to take whatever they've got to the tip without being charged, and it helps our region stay neat and not have the issue that we had at Fidola Lagoon and other places where rubbish is just being dumped because it's too hard or it's perceived to be too expensive. And then that might encourage people who don't regularly go to the tip to have a look, check it out, and find that it's actually not too expensive or prohibitive for people to get to.
Okay, we'll be around the room, and last chance for anybody. Okay. Thank you, councillors. I'll now ask if. No, it's Councillor Murphy.
I'll let the council after that.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to suggest that, or move that council adjourns into closed session, the recording of the meeting be suspended, members in the press and public be excluded from the closed session, and that access to correspondence and reports relating to the items considered during the closed session be withheld unless deemed justified by separate resolution. And the reason for that, Madam Mayor, is because item 12.1 relates to personal information, items 12.2,
No, it will be
0.3 and 0.4 relate to commercial and confidence information.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine.
So we go into
The council resumes into open chamber that press and gallery be readmitted, that the streaming device is reactivated, and that the mayoral resolutions made in closed council.
Thank you very much. In favour? Carried. Thank you very much, council, for your attendance today. What is discussion? I think if you need to add, yes.
For the purpose of the rejoined gallery and recording, during the closed session of council and item 12.1, councillor Sullivan would accept a quote from Morello Earthmoving for $9,297 for the demolition of a residential dwelling in debt, and we resolved that the cost will become a debt upon the land, and further that we will negotiate repayment of that said debt. In relation to item 12.2, the purchase of plant, council has approved and accepts a tender from Tuck Bryant for the supply of one Bomag BC 772 RB2, which is a compactor for the landfill for the sum of $709,500. In relation to item 12.3, a plant purchase, the council accepts a tender from again Tuck Bryant for the supply of some Smoogenode SH235 SX excavator for the sum of $285,010. And in relation to 12.4, that council approves the supply and installation of additional taxiway and apron floodlighting at the Wentworth Aerodrome from advanced lighting, airport lighting, as a variation of the existing contract BT 1920/06 for a total sum of $330,400.40.
Very good information and focus this month for the boys. Thank you for your attendance and I'll close the meeting. What can you say? Next meeting will be.
Click this. Come to one, you're not supposed to see it.
You're right.
Oh,
I see him saying it could be over.